Really expected to change the surname after marriage, or even like Miss to Mrs.
Yeah.
or something like that, but men are not. I thought it come from a like a ownership kind of thought.
There was really only one instance that I think brought to light the fact that I am a woman in science and can be treated differently because of that. That, during school,
Not pressure, but kind of like it's her responsibility of taking care of children, home, and maybe
something that you can't explicitly not hire someone for, but I have heard that there was
equality or equity,
equity.
tradition or reinvention. Hi, Megan. Thank you so much for accepting my
Actually,
invitation. First of all, how are you?
good, thank you. It's nice and sunny here, so can't complain too much.
Yeah, same in India. It's like super good. I think Feb March is good to come in Delhi. Yeah. Okay. So I'm like really, really very grateful that you accepted my invitation for this occasion, International Women's Day. And if you could introduce yourself, that would be great for my audience.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Meghan Marshall, and I am a PhD candidate at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch, New Zealand. I'm originally from Canada, though, and have come to Christchurch just to study and complete my PhD, and I'm 2.5 years in, so I've got another about year before I submit and finish like Shalou.
How are you feeling about like you're about to step into your final year, right? Or you are already in kind of.
Yeah, this is essentially my final year now, which I think is exciting and frightening at the same time. That it's nice that there's a tiny speck of a light at the end of the tunnel, but there's also so many things to do before then. So I can't really think about it just yet. That there's some things I have to get done first, and then I think it'll feel closer.
Yeah, it feels really intense in the end, but I think we just get through it and it feels so good. I feel so good
Yeah,
now.
I'm looking forward to pressing that submit button for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So before jumping into the conversation deeply, I would like to ask some background questions. And like the first one is like you said, you are originally from Canada. So how did you choose like New Zealand? It's so far.
Yes, it is quite far. How I chose it was that I knew I wanted to do a PhD abroad, that it would be a bit shorter than it would have been in Canada or the US. That usually there a PhD will take about 6 to 8 years, and here and many other places it's 3 to 4 years. So that was something that was really appealing to me, and also being able to use grad school as an opportunity to live abroad and experience a different country. That was really appealing. And so I actually had a supervisor during my undergrad in one of my work terms that I had expressed this interest in doing a PhD abroad. And so he was able to give me a list of names of people that he knew who would have research he thought would be relevant to my interests. And so he gave me this list of names, and I went through them and, talked to a prof in Australia and talked to a prof in Germany, and then talked to my current supervisors here. And that's the one that worked out. And so that's how I ended up here. It was a lot of connections that it's quite a small world that actually my current supervisor is Canadian too, and did his master's in the same lab that one of my professors did her honors. And so there was kind of dual connections there. And it was lovely also being able to come knowing that my supervisor was Canadian and could relate in a lot of ways to being far from home and like the differences between Canada and here.
Yeah. I think that's really great. Like you knew someone and got it through the connections. Because I remember when I was applying for PhD, I applied for about like 100 plus applications. And it took me about like I think 8 to 10 months to get like starting to get interviews. And it was so intense that I felt like, oh my God, if I can do this, I can definitely do PhD.
Yeah, do the PhD. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it wasn't a first go that, like, as I said, I spoke to a
Yeah.
prof in Australia, but because I don't have a master's, I have an honors bachelor. He had said, you're probably not competitive enough to get scholarship, in which case you would have to pay your own tuition, which would be international costs. And I couldn't afford to pay, 50,000 Australian dollars a year. And then in
Yeah.
Germany, because I don't have a master's, you're required to have a master's in order to do a PhD,
Yeah.
even if you have an honors bachelor. And so, because of that, I knew that Germany and a lot of places in Europe kind of weren't an option. But I'm so happy that I have ended up here, that my supervisors really are the best I could have asked for, and I enjoy my project. And I think Christchurch does suit me quite well, which is nice.
Yeah. Christchurch is amazing. I think I really love Christchurch. I never thought like I'll plan of living away from my home. After PhD, I thought I'll just run back to home. I think I was very homesick, but I think Christchurch is really, really nice. I don't feel like leaving it now.
I
But
agree.
yeah,
I think the homesickness really comes in waves, that there are
yeah,
times that I just want to go home and then
yeah,
times that I can't imagine leaving Christchurch. So
yeah. Okay. I've like, what was your major in bachelor's? Was it engineering or biotechnology something?
yeah, so I did an honors Bachelor of Science in
Yeah,
biotechnology.
yeah,
And biotechnology at the University of British Columbia falls under microbiology and immunology. Um,
yeah. Are there many industrial opportunities after that? Like, did you think of joining industry or maybe doing teaching or something else after that? Because you did honors degree. Like, why did you think of just research?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people from my program did go directly into industry because our program is joint between the University of British Columbia and the British Columbia Institute of Technology. So you get 2 years of the really hands-on experience at BCIT in order to prepare you to go directly into industry. And in that program, we also had 16 months of work terms built in. And so two of mine were in academia, and then one was in industry. And it was great that we had this opportunity to try different things to really be able to find what we enjoyed and what suited us best. And so it was in having those opportunities that I decided that I did like research and wanted to pursue it, and also felt that I might be limited in having my bachelor's in the biotech industry, that a lot of people I knew in the positions I wanted to be able to get to had a PhD. Of if you want to be a scientist or a senior scientist, at least in the Vancouver biotech industry, you kind of have to have a PhD. And so that was motivation for me
Nice.
to continue my education and go a bit further.
Yeah, nice. Okay. Like you were saying about missing home, do you had a like big cultural shock after coming to New Zealand from Canada?
I think not as much as I'm sure you had. um, that
I had a
I'm,
huge,
yeah, exactly. Like I'm extremely grateful that English is my first language and New Zealand speaks English primarily. That I didn't have much language to learn, although there are different terms and phrases and things like that. But it wasn't really a barrier to success at all, which I really appreciated. And generally, the weather is quite similar to Vancouver, where I did my undergrad, but a bit drier. So it's actually the best climate, I would say, out of the three cities I've lived in now. And there are things like foods that I would miss from home, but really nothing that is all that significant, I would say, for culture shock.
yeah,
That it really made me appreciate actually how difficult it can be to be an international student. And I was a residence advisor during my undergrad, and I think appreciated that it would be challenging to be an international student, but didn't really understand until I actually became one and have to go through things like renewing your visa and doing all the medical checks and background
yeah,
checks and moving so far from home and dealing with time differences and communicating with friends and family, that I think that's been more of the challenge than necessarily a difference in culture, but just the distance from home.
yeah, yeah. Distance sucks. Yeah. I think for you also, it takes like a long flight to go back, right? Is
Yeah, so for me, the shortest duration to get home is about 20 hours.
similar
That
kind
there's
of.
like a
Yeah.
14 or 15-hour flight and then like a 1 hour flight on either end with a layover, or another 4 hour flight, depending on which way you go.
Yeah, similar. It's like, but that flight is quite gets quite expensive. If you like literally book, I think a while ago, then only you get it because I was booking like about 3 days ago. So I was mostly getting about 40 hours flight. And it's not like I have to be in the plane for these hours. It's like 20 hours or 10 hours layover. So that is like, oh my
Yeah.
God, just like too much.
And it feels
Yeah,
like you're using some of your vacation time when the
exactly.
layovers are that long. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Okay. So I had a just curious question. Like, and for instance, I did my master's from an institute which is majorly for engineering. So I saw there was a great gender gap there, though it's like getting better now. But I see mostly like males, like men there. So in your, but in chemistry, I still like observed there was like kind of equal, not much like, but in engineering, like we see there is a huge gender gap. Even at like the academic positions, if we see, they're mostly males, if we see, mostly
Yeah.
men in your degree in biotech. how was the like gender gap, like the thing there?
Yeah, I think because it's more of a biology related field, it actually, my cohort was dominated by women, as far as my classmates went, which was great that it was a cohort of 22 and there was only 4 men in the
Oh,
class. So there was actually a lot of women in my cohort. And I think um, they tend to have more even splits usually in the years, but there's usually a bit more women entering biotech. Although I still saw that a lot of my professors were men that, and a lot of my supervisors when I was doing, especially the positions in academia, that a lot of my supervisors and professors were men in those roles. And so I think something that I had learned in trying to investigate why there was this gap was that, women are going into these fields, but then don't necessarily feel supported to continue. That in academia, a lot of the time, I think it's advertised that this is a position that requires a lot of time and effort if you want to be a professor and doesn't necessarily have the best work-life balance. It's quite notorious for being, overworked and taking a lot of time. And I think that's something that a lot of women in having the still quite traditional roles of often being the caretaker, that
yeah.
they're a lot less likely to then want to take on those positions in academia, even though it is definitely doable to be a professor and to have that work-life balance so long as you institute your own boundaries. And that's something that I've seen here in having closer interactions with professors as a PhD student, that there are women who are professors and still have a family and still are able to, balance that, or don't have a family but still have a good work-life balance. But that's something that I think the perception has to change, and the ways in which positions are advertised have to change too, to kind of broaden that and make the job postings more inclusive and considerate of things like family and time off and things like that.
Yeah. I think this advertisement thing is really like a great thought. I didn't think of that because yeah, that can scare off the women and being like, I don't know, it's mental conditioning or evolution is in this way. Like we women usually think like it's our duty, kind of. I don't know if it comes from conditioning really or what.
Mhm.
Have you like if you can share this in even in anonymous way, have you talked to any professor who is women, like who have shared even after coming at that level and she feels like kind of not pressure, but kind of like it's her responsibility of taking care of children, home, and maybe not of their partner or husband or
Mhm.
something like that.
I haven't directly talked to many women about this, but it is something I have observed that still, like, both in industry and academia, the women that I had as supervisors, or who were in these higher positions, still did often take on more of the like caring for children, or for other family members, that they were often still the caretakers, even though they were in these higher level positions.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope this like kind of changes with the because what I feel like even after coming at the specific position, both like men and women, still some men kind of expect that like for instance they both are like professors, but men kind of expect that women it's women's duty to take care of children and like doing all the household chores, and sometimes women also think that like it's their duty, and then I feel that then it creates a gap and
Mhm.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
there's also a gap just in service in terms of, say, at the university being part of committees and doing all of these tasks that aren't directly related to job output, of like, if you're spending time on committees because you're passionate about representation, equity, and diversity, or something else, that often women will take on a lot more of these roles that are not contributing to time publishing papers or writing grants, or these more tangible job outputs, that's been found that women are often taking on these kind of invisible roles, and
Yeah.
not necessarily getting recognition for that.
Yeah, even like I'm not 100% sure about it. It's just I've heard from my colleagues who are married that if they are married, they usually don't get appointed for that position. They are applying for even a single woman get it because the people who are hiring, they think like, oh, then she'll be spending lots of time at home or busy. And specifically if they're newly married or planning for a kid, then they think, oh dear, they'll be into it. Yeah.
I've heard that too, and it's something that you can't explicitly um, not hire someone for, but I have heard that there was a postdoc that I worked for who was about to have a baby, and that was a big conversation was, in being a woman who, whether or not you're planning to have children, it's just kind of assumed, I think, a lot of the time that if you're in a relationship and you're going to have children. And so that is something that I think subconsciously really impacts a lot of hiring decisions. And it's really unfortunate because, you can have great work outputs, even if, say, you go on maternity leave, that you can have really good work outputs. You just have gaps in your CV. And a lot of the time, those gaps are seen as blemishes when really
Okay.
they are you taking time to have balance in your life and do these other things. And that's something that's often not accounted for.
Yeah, I was watching a movie, like a short movie on women empowerment in something, and one lady was coming after, I think, a year gap after her maternity leave, and lots of people in the office they were talking like, "Oh, you are coming after vacation. How was your vacation?" And I think, and already they are like women are going through usually from postpartum after that,
Mm.
and it feels so hurtful, right? When someone is saying, "Oh, you're coming after vacation," and when all they had maybe sleepless nights or taking care of whole family and even of their bodies after such a big
Mhm.
change. Yeah, that felt very disappointing as a society after watching that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I know you're involved in lots of outreach activities as well. So has that changed or shaped your perspective in women in science?
Um, Well, I suppose the most relevant experience in terms of being a woman in science, as far as outreach, is that I'm on the School of Biological Sciences Committee for Representation, Equity, and Diversity, which is something that I was passionate about, and I've been able to be part of a couple changes around the university as far as things like parenting rooms being accessible
Yeah.
for students, gender neutral washrooms becoming more accessible, and people being aware of where these restrooms actually are. Um, that there's a couple ways in which I've been involved in that, or like changing of regalia colors and things that it's been great to be a part of that committee. And I think I don't really think of how my gender influences my role on that committee, but it has been really lovely that the two co-chairs, there's a man and a woman as the co-chairs, and I think they work together really well and complement each other very well. But it's nice seeing, a woman as one of the co-chairs of this committee, and she
Yeah.
especially has been really supportive of me being on the committee and really encouraging as well. Same with the head of the school sits on that committee and has also been very encouraging every time I've helped to institute change. She's always reached out and congratulated me or thanked me, which has been really lovely because I think encouragement like that is so helpful in continuing to be involved. Of just having that recognition, I think, especially from other women in the field, is quite wonderful and really encourages you to stay active and continue to work towards progressing the university or whatever situation you're in.
Yeah, and I think like for instance, you said there was one co-chair who is women. So I think we as like budding scientists or researchers, we feel really motivated and inspired. Like, oh, if there is someone sitting there, then we can also be in the leadership position. Otherwise, like when I was a kid, like maybe in high school, I thought like it's always men. I'm not supposed to be there. I had this kind of feeling because I just didn't see people doing all of these activities because my mom was homemaker. So I thought, oh, that's the duty.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Have you ever faced like any kind of gender bias or any like discrimination in during your PhD journey or your bachelor's? And you can keep it anonymous. And if you have seen someone facing that,
Mhm.
yeah,
I've been very fortunate that during my PhD, I haven't experienced any sort of discrimination, which I think is, I'm very lucky and fortunate because I know that that's not the case for a lot of people, whether discrimination based on being a woman or able-bodied or your sexual orientation or
so yeah,
anything like your ethnicity, that I'm very fortunate and privileged in a lot of ways. And also, both of my supervisors, I have two men as supervisors who are both so encouraging of women that actually both of their labs are dominated by women, which was really a wonderful environment to come into because I was aware of the fact that, I had two men as supervisors, but the best, that they're really encouraging and wonderful and caring and care about me as a person, not just as a student, which is lovely. And during my undergrad, I was also very fortunate that I really didn't face much discrimination. That there was really only one instance that I think brought to light the fact that I am a woman in science and can be treated differently because of that. That, during school, from grade school all the way through finishing high school, I think it never really crossed my mind that, like, I'm a woman and I want to enter STEM, and that can be quite male dominated. That, my teachers were always so supportive and encouraging, and my parents were, that it really wasn't something that crossed my mind. And then in my first year of university, I was in a physics class, which, of course, physics is really quite heavily male dominated a lot of the time. And it was a course that I just had to take as a prerequisite, that I wasn't super interested in physics, but just had to take this course. And I remember doing this worksheet that you had to have, a randomly assigned group, and you were working on this worksheet. And I was with 3 other men in my class, and we were just going through trying to figure out these questions. And I had the answer, that I knew how to find the answer. And I had to prove myself so much more, that they went through, the 3 of them, of what they thought was the answer before they've listened to me.
Yeah.
And, it felt really like I had to prove that I was right rather than just them believing I was right. That was really the first and thankfully only experience that I did experience discrimination in that sense, because it was quite clear that they didn't think I was right, and they were treating each other quite differently than they were treating me. But I was, very lucky that that was my only experience, and also something that didn't, have this grave impact, that it made me aware, but it didn't discourage me in any way.
Yeah, I can relate. I had like a similar kind of experience in like my master's, during my master's, and I was a part of a club which was heavily male dominated. Like I think I was the only one who was in leadership position there. And
Mhm.
used to have lots of ideas, but they just won't listen. And if I have to make them listen, like they will just like ask lots of questions, and made me feel like I always have to prove that yes, this idea can work and I can host this event. So always had to prove them like, see, this is what I've done and I can do that. That was very
Mhm.
like, but yeah, that made me aware like, okay, this is the world look like going
Mhm.
into these positions, and we have to navigate through it, and probably we can with the right support. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. My another question which I had like in mind for a long time, like, do you think academic systems sometimes, or even like mostly these positions, unintentionally reflect broader social norms?
I think, kind of going back to what we were discussing
Yeah.
about, the way that these positions are advertised,
Yeah.
that can really reflect a lot of social norms, that um, you often will see more men in these higher positions, especially when you get like to professor and past that, once you start getting to heads of departments and heads of schools and deans, and then like vice chancellors and chancellors, and these really high level positions within the university, that I think there has been progress made
Yeah.
of getting more women into these positions, but there still is a gap that needs to be closed. And also, in saying that, I went to school in Canada and now New Zealand, which are 2 countries that really generally are trying to have better gender balance, which I know isn't the case for a lot of places around the world.
Yeah.
So
True.
that's just speaking in terms of like Canada and New Zealand, that you still do see this gender imbalance, but at least I'd like to think that it is closing over time, because we're aware of it and trying to work towards having more equal balance. But also, there still is all these societal norms of women being caretakers, and that then takes them
Yeah.
out of the job force for, however many years, because of being a caregiver and just taking maternity leave and things like that. That does often slow their career progression. So that naturally will put them behind a lot of men in the field. And so I think broader in terms of society, that there just has to be more equality, and also being caretakers of like paternity leave as well as maternity leave, and
Yeah.
making it so that it's just parental leave in general, rather than it being the expectation that the woman's going to take all of this time off.
Yeah.
So that there is better equality in that sense too.
Yeah. And sometimes I think like some men are really empathetic, but even after being empathetic, they do not understand, like, because maybe they don't go through, they do not understand what actually women go through. So they can't make things like really inclusive. Like we were talking about advertisement. So maybe some, like one of the men or any in male dominated field, they are advertising or they are doing something in outreach, but because maybe they don't know how to make it inclusive for women, they cannot put it in that way. But if there is a woman who knows how things go for them, she can actually come up with a better idea to make it more inclusive, which,
Yeah,
yeah,
and there has been research as well on
yeah,
specifically like job advertisements, and that a lot of the time women will only apply for a position if they meet, 90 or 100% of the listed criteria, whereas men oftentimes will apply if they meet, 50%. And that's something too that I'm not sure how that can be changed and fixed, but at least in terms of the advertisements, putting a line of like you don't need to meet all of these requirements and explicitly stating that, or even another example that we've talked about um, in biological sciences is things of like being able to work with Maori communities. That in saying that, you are then assuming that the person is not Maori themselves, and so there's things that we do that we think are being helpful, but actually are kind of making assumptions in and of themselves. But like the university that I'm at has been putting forward new guidelines specifically for job advertisements to try and make sure that you're getting a diverse group of people applying. Because like something that I found in our department, that we had two open positions that we only have like very few women in the department already, and we had two new positions opening and both were filled by men. And don't get me wrong, they're both great, but
yeah,
I was quite disappointed to see that and had brought that forward. And when I brought it forward, the department definitely acknowledged it, and it said, we just didn't have many women apply. And so if you're not getting women, or in terms of any other type of diversity, applying, then how are you supposed to hire them? And like, do you
yeah,
then wait another round? And so I really do think that going all the way back down to like the job application can have an impact too, that it's not just who you're choosing out of the pool of applicants, but who you're getting who's applying to.
yeah. And what are your thoughts on that? Like, I'm not sure why, like, just as a woman, we think of like we apply to the position when we literally 80 to 90% match. I kind of do that. Like, I apply to that position where I feel I'll be really good at. So I thought it is coming from the perfectionism trait. Like, I didn't know like it's just for a woman. I didn't know that like men do that if they even match 50%. But that part of
Yeah.
advertisement, I remember I applied to the position where they needed engineering plant kind of thing. And I had no like experience in that, but they had one statement that even if you are from chemistry background and you don't have relevant skills, just apply, we might talk. And then I applied because they did write about it. So I think, yeah, that makes a
Yeah.
huge difference. Otherwise I wouldn't have applied to that position at all, because I would have thought like I can't be a good like match there. So, do you think it's because of inferiority complex in women? But I thought it's like more of a person thing, not women or men.
I think that it could go back to women feeling like they have to prove themselves and feel like they really do need to fit and belong in those positions. And that's why they feel the need generally to match all the criteria. Because I definitely do that, that I think if I don't match all the criteria, then I'm not a good enough candidate.
Yeah,
And so
that's what
when they
I,
explicitly say you
yeah,
don't have to meet all of that criteria, then it helps kind of bridge that gap and open the door to, okay, I actually can apply for this position and potentially get it. So I think that's a potential reason, is just like women often feeling the need to prove themselves still. And that comes through with feeling whether you actually are suited for positions.
yeah, yeah. But that was nice. I might put some research like
Yeah.
thing here. I didn't know about it. Yeah. Thanks for letting me know.
Mhm.
Okay. One more thing I was thinking
It's
about, like,
actually Alyssa Cameron from University of Canterbury published an article about the like disparity in who applies for jobs. So it's from she's one of the authors on it.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll put that link. I think that would be really informative. Yeah. Okay. I've been thinking about something more social and cultural. And like in many parts of the world, women are traditionally expected to change the surname after marriage, or even like Miss to Mrs.
Yeah.
or something like that, but men are not. I thought it come from a like a ownership kind of mindset. Like before marriage, it's like father's surname, and after marriage, it's like husband's surname. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's fair, or I don't know, just your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because it's definitely something that has come to mind. That I think I personally, and of course it's everyone's personal
Yeah,
choice, I think, of what you want to do, but I think like, if and when I eventually get married, I would love to hyphenate. And then it's like I still get my last name and still have their last name, like, that union together. That I think that would be nice. And I'm somebody that I don't particularly care what, like, if I had children, what their last name was. Um, I don't feel the need to like have my children have my last name, um, which I know is not everyone's opinion. But I do definitely, I like my last name. And I think also in terms of like getting degrees and, becoming a doctor of philosophy with getting our PhDs, we get those certifications with our current last name. And so I want to keep that last name because like I heard somebody say this, that it's me who got the PhD, not my partner. And so it should be my last name, not my partner's. Um, which is something that was quite funny. But yeah, I really think that it's a person to person choice. And I really appreciate like when people will mush their names together or hyphenate or like do something to kind of make it feel like more of an equal split rather than just this assumption that like, of course, the woman's going to take the last name. And I mean, I think part of that also is coming from, you know, queer couples of like, then you don't necessarily have this
yeah.
defined gender role of like who's taking whose name. And I think that's been able to also like broaden the horizons generally. Um,
Yeah, because I feel like this makes me question on my identity, and I feel like, am I really empowered if I'm taking like somebody's surname? Or
yeah,
maybe I think in that way, I don't know. I just feel like, is there literally a need of taking surname? And if like you want to show union to the world, maybe a hyphenated makes still sense to me. But I feel like we can be like normal with the name. And even with child, we can keep maybe hyphenated just to show equality or equity, something like that. But why my children should take the name of the other? Like my husband or my
yeah.
partner. I don't think so. I can do that, but I
And I
don't
really
know.
think
Yeah,
like if that's what you want to do, all the power to you, but it should be a discussion, not an assumption.
yeah, true, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So, if any young woman seeing our discussion, what would you like to say them? Like, not advise or something, but if they are also having questions about like going into STEM or doing something or going into a leadership position, what will
Mhm.
you say to her or them? Yeah.
Yeah. I think I would just encourage you to follow your passions and that there will be support. That even if it doesn't feel like it, there are people supporting you and rooting for you. And there's a lot of really wonderful, strong women in STEM who will be there to support you if you are finding it challenging. Um, and there's a lot of men too who are really there supporting
Yeah.
you.
True.
Like as I said, that my supervisors are both fantastic and really supportive. And so there is a community in STEM there to help you. And so I don't think that you should let gender really play a role in what you want to do and what career you want to follow. And that goes past STEM too, of like trades and sports and things that, you know, you shouldn't let gender really define your abilities, that you can do what you want to do.
Yeah, and I think like you've been talking about your supervisors many times in the conversation. I think in PhD, your supervisor matters a lot. Who are they?
Oh,
I
yeah.
I think like I'm also extremely fortunate to have both like supervisors really amazing who push me to do good
Mhm.
or like motivate me to like I remember I had a question of where to go and something like that. And one of my supervisor was really motivating me to do aim high. Don't after PhD, don't do some random things, but aim high or do what you love, something like that. So that was like really helpful, really nice. I thought like very kind.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and the final question for today's conversation is like, what's your Women's Day message to young and aspiring scientists or researchers around the world? I hope lots of people see this.
Um, I guess just, Women's Day, it shouldn't just be a day. It should be every day that we're supporting and acknowledging and really uplifting and encouraging women. And that's not just a job for women to do, but everyone to do, to be supportive and encouraging. And so yeah, support and encourage the women in your lives and appreciate them. And I guess just like reflect too on the ways in which you can support the women around you, and really uplift them every day of the year, not just International Women's Day.
Yeah, true. Thank you so much, Megan, for accepting my invitation, and I really enjoyed having a conversation with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shalu, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay, just like to end this with fun session, so I'll ask you like rapid fire, and you just don't have to
Okay.
overthink it. It's just your instincts. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Oh, nice. Okay. Lab work or research writing?
Lab work.
Lab coat or comfy hoodie? That is.
Hoodie.
Yeah, early morning or late night?
Early morning.
Do you like to like publish fast or publish perfectly?
Um, Perfectly fast.
Supervisor feedback or like peer discussion?
I think supervisor feedback for me.
Industry or academia?
That's a big question. I'm currently open to both.
Equality or equity?
Equity,
Tradition or reinvention?
reinvention.
Yeah, same. These tags like Mrs., Miss, or just you, just your name.
I think just me is great.
Work-life balance or work-life integration?
Oh, I don't think I've ever heard work-life integration before. Um, I think balance because I think it is still important to keep them, separate enough.
Yeah. Personal empowerment or collective empowerment?
Oh, collective empowerment.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being so nice.
Thank
I
you.
thoroughly
Thanks so
enjoyed this
much.
conversation.